Hey everybody, it's Hope, and you are watching or listening, if you're on the podcast, to Simply Live with Hope. I am so glad that you found me, found our podcast, or found me on YouTube. We're going to have some fun today. It's going to be really technical and complex, and there's going to be a lot of information. Today we're going to talk about gender identity and gender expression, and kind of the differences between the two. We're going to hit a lot of terminology and really kind of talk about all that goes along with that. And I shouldn't say all, because it is so crazy. There is so much. In fact, while I was doing some research for this video or podcast, I read something that Facebook has 58 different genders that you can select from for your profile, and that really goes to show just how diverse gender identity really is. And we're going to talk about some of the social aspects of gender identity, gender expression, and all that sort of thing as well too. Before I get into that, I want to hit a little bit of precursor things. First of all, I'm once again here in my truck. This is my beautiful little studio that I have here. It actually is really cool. So I'm gonna do a video definitely to give you a little tour of my truck and where I spend the majority of my time, because I do work as a freight relocation specialist, or otherwise known as a truck driver, and I travel all over the country delivering food and beverages, mostly that type of thing, product. Pull a 53-foot trailer, and I drive a Volvo VNL 860, which is a pretty big truck. I got a nice size sleeper here, and we'll show you that sometime. Also, if it looks like there is an earthquake going on right now, I am so sorry. I am currently being unloaded at this very moment, and my truck is backed into a dock, and there's forklifts driving in and out of my truck, and it shakes the truck, and it looks like there's an earthquake going on. So I'm not going through an earthquake. It's okay. We're good. But it shakes pretty good once in a while. I might have to grab my coffee and make sure it doesn't spill, that sort of thing. That's why I always keep a lid on there. So in any case, that's about where we are right now. The other thing is, please find me on all of my social media. I'm going to start a TikTok pretty soon here. So kind of keep an eye out for that, and I'll drop more news once that one's up. The one that is up right now at this very moment is my Instagram, and that's going to be really my main way of getting a hold of me, through Instagram, either commenting on my posts or through messaging, that sort of thing, because I do a very good job of making sure that I keep tabs on my Instagram account. So find me on Instagram, and it would be Simply Live with Hope. No spaces, no underscores, everything is spelled right. Simply Live with Hope, and on Instagram, and you will find me on there. And definitely follow, and then also share that with your friends and family as well too, because we're going to have a lot of cool information for everybody, and I will keep it updated on there as far as when you can find and where you can find videos and podcasts and all that sort of thing. So with regards to YouTube, you are probably watching this on YouTube right now, because so far that has been the success that I've had as far as getting my media up. This is only the first episode. Well, I've got episode 0, which kind of just describes who I am and what I'm doing. And then this is episode 1, and it's gender identity and gender expression. But as far as the podcasts are up, but it's my first time uploading podcasts, and I have not been able to find them on Spotify yet. So if anybody was able to find it on Spotify or iTunes, or I think there's a Google podcast, and there's some other stuff too. If you were actually able to find that, send me a message and let me know how you found it, because I'd like to be able to share that information. But I will most likely be putting up on my Instagram direct links for the podcast, if I can figure out how to do that, because I'm really new to this. So I will work through it. there's that. But once we get things up and rolling here, we should be able to get things squared away so that you can favorite us on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be able to listen to them while you're driving and that sort of thing. So I appreciate you for coming along on the journey with me, sharing some good times, information, learning things, that sort of thing, and definitely the laughs. And so speaking of laughs, I want to start out each one of my episodes with a random fact about me, and I am not afraid to poke fun at myself. So fun fact about myself is that I once drove my $3,000 zero-turn radius riding lawnmower into my pond. Yeah, like all the way, like underwater, like I was swimming. Like it was April, maybe, I think it was the beginning of May in Wisconsin, and that water was fucking cold. So yeah, soaked to the bone. Had to go back into the water after I got out to hook up a winch cable to the thing and pull it back out. Not fun. It cost me a lot of money too to get the thing fixed. So that's a crazy life that I live. So yeah, drove my riding lawnmower into the pond once. It was accidental. I didn't do it on purpose, but it's the story of my life, all the crazy things that happen. So that's your random fact about Hope for today. Moving on to other news, I am looking for a co-host. So if you are a like-minded individual, you do not have to be transgender or anywhere outside of the cisgender norms, but it is required that certainly that if you are not, that you're an ally and that you support LGBTQ, transgender, and all the other identities that go along with that, of course, because that's a lot of what this channel is about. The other thing is that you got to be okay with speaking. Being able to talk on camera, have a conversation, and not be afraid to share yourself. I need consistency, so I want to make sure that we have at least one podcast out every single week. We don't necessarily have to record every week, but we need to record a couple at a time so that I can space them out if needed. So if those are things that are interest to you, you've ever wanted to do YouTubes or podcasts, and you want to join me and be a regular contributor, I would love to talk to you about that. So follow me on Instagram, and let's get to know each other. Or maybe it's somebody that already knows me and you want to be my co-host. Let's talk. It'd be fun. So it's really hard to sit here and talk on your own and be informative and entertaining and that sort of thing when you're just staring at your camera. I think it would be really beneficial to have a co-host. I think most of the podcasts that I listen to all have two or more people. Not all of them, but the best ones all have two or more people, and it's interesting having a little bit of a banter and some different takes on some things. So that is something I'm looking for. So hit me up. Again, Instagram, you can find it Simply Live with Hope, and find me on there, send me a message, and I would love to talk to you about potentially being a co-host, or even if you just want to have an idea for a video or podcast, and maybe you want to be a guest on there for that specific topic, if it's something of your expertise, I'd love to talk to you about that too. So it doesn't have to be something where you're a regular co-host, but maybe just a guest. With that said, let's talk about gender identity and gender expression, and the differences between those, and some other things like that. So first thing, gender identity. What is it? Okay, so gender identity is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as an individual personal sense of having a particular gender. I personally am not 100% in agreement with that definition. It's close. I do think it's an individual's personal sense of having a particular gender, but I think they should add on there, or none at all, or multiple genders. And because the way that the definition is written right now, in the Oxford Dictionary anyway, it's really excluding people that are non-binary, and we'll get to the terminology on that in a little bit. And all that falls under the non-binary spectrum. And I feel like having the right definitions and the proper terminology is very, very important, because not having that definition, or perhaps not having terminology for specific individuals, is basically saying like they're not valid, or that their identity is not valid, and that's not cool. So every one of us is a valid human being. The way that we express ourselves, everybody's unique. Even when you look at within the cisgender roles, which again, terminology you may not have heard, and I'm going to explain it, or the transgender roles and everything that falls underneath that, we're all valid. Okay. And like I said, even when you talk about the cisgender, let's just talk about cisgender right away, because I don't want to keep throwing out a terminology that you may not understand. I know if you would ask me probably about 7 or 8 months ago what cisgender meant, I had no clue. I'm like, I never heard of the word. Okay. And I think that a lot of people have heard it and understand it. I had no exposure to anything outside of a male-female gender role. So as such, I had not heard the word. So cisgender is basically when your gender identity corresponds with the gender that you're assigned at birth. Okay, right? So you're born in the hospital, or maybe not. Maybe you're born by a midwife in a bathtub. I'm not sure. But in any case, you're born, you are assigned the gender at birth. Pretty typically, if you have a penis, you're going to be assigned male. If you have a vagina, you're going to be assigned female. And I say typically because that is not always the case. There is actually individuals that are born with both genitalia, and oftentimes in that case, the parents will choose the gender that they feel that most suits that infant at that time. In some cases, they're wrong, and that's a whole other story for another topic. Could do an entire episode on that in and of itself. So I'm not going to delve too deep into that. But the main thing is just kind of talking about the cisgender. Basically, a child is assigned a gender at birth, and in most cases, that is the correct gender for that child. Now, cis is spelled C-I-S, and the gender has this common spelling, so C-I-S-G-E-N-D-E-R. Cis is a Latin prefix, and what it basically means is this side of, okay? And conversely, trans or transgender, trans would be the Latin prefix meaning across from, okay? So cisgender, this side of, trans, across from. So you can kind of see where things are going there, where it's just basically kind of opposite of each other. So in general, and I'm not an expert on this, so if you feel like I'm wrong, or maybe that I need a little clarification, definitely drop a comment below, send me a message on Instagram. Love to read your comments on this. But in general, the way that I understand it is you typically have two very distinct categories. Okay, you have your cisgender, which is going to include the majority of the population, and then you have transgender. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, no, there's way more than that. There's non-binary, and there's bigender, and demigirl, demiboy, and androgynous. And the way that I'm understand it is essentially you have cisgender and you have transgender, and all those other things fall underneath the transgender umbrella. Okay, again, not an expert, could be wrong. So if you think that I'm wrong, please correct me, and I'd love to talk about it. But the way that I understand it, transgender being the opposite of cisgender, and that essentially denotes that a person relates to a gender identity that does not correspond with the gender that they're assigned at birth. Okay, and so we're going to talk about a term in here as well too that you may see in writing more often than probably spoken, but it's AFAB or AMAB. It's short, an acronym for assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth, AFAB or AMAB. Okay, so And that is, like I said, the majority of individuals are going to be assigned a gender at birth. Not everyone is going to end up identifying with those, and that's where you fall into the transgender things. So once you start talking about transgender, then you have subcategories below that, and there is a ton of stuff that falls under the transgender umbrella. Okay, now most of us, I think, when we think of transgender, we think of trans women or trans girls. Luna, hey. No. Luna wanted to be part of the podcast. Luna, hey. Come here, baby. Come show yourself. Come on up. Luna. This is my baby. This is my baby. This is Luna. She's my baby. She just wanted to be on too, so we're going to let her be on. So, we were talking about trans women, or trans girls, trans men, trans boys, and their relation within the transgender. So I think that the majority of us, when we think of transgender, we think of transgender men, transgender women. But like I said, there's a lot that falls underneath that as well too. So we have the non-binary. Non-binary, again, you may or may not have heard of the term, and maybe you've heard of it, but you don't necessarily understand what it means. So non-binary, Luna, can you just not bark so much? Okay, I know there's people out there, just let them be. So, oh yeah, so non-binary, there's a lot that falls under the non-binary thing. So again, another umbrella term. Some folks just identify as non-binary, but underneath that is potentially gender neutral, agender, which those two, as I understand it, are basically just not having a specific gender identity, do not necessarily identify as male or female. You have gender fluid, and there's some other ones that go along with the gender fluid as well. I'm like gazing at all my notes here. I've got tons of them. So you have gender fluid or bigender, gender queer, some folks call themselves. And the way, again, I understand it, there may be some minute differences between some of these, but basically that they may flow between genders, or in some cases may identify as both. And oftentimes with non-binary folks, they may go between different genders, and it may be any particular day, or it could actually be a much longer time. So you may have somebody that's gender fluid, or in some way other non-binary that maybe associates a little bit more with as a female on a certain day, and other times maybe more male. Some of them, it may be a longer term, where maybe that they feel more masculine or feminine. And then you also have ones that basically just are not associating with a gender specifically at all. Oftentimes referred to as, again, sort of an umbrella term of androgynous, where they basically don't feel masculine or feminine and might present that way as well too. So where you look at them and you're really not sure because they're not presenting as specifically male or female. And then agender, again, just not associating with a gender specifically at all. There are some other ones as well. Demi-girl, demi-boy. So as I understand it, demi-girl essentially feels both masculine and feminine, but would tend to be more on the feminine side. Demi-boy, just the opposite of that, feels both masculine and feminine, feels more on the masculine side most of the time. Okay, so that's demi-girl, demi-boy. And then you have bigender, that may feel like both at any given time or together. So lots of different things. If you have friends or family members or that sort of thing, I would ask them to explain themselves a little bit more to you as they're comfortable with that, because again, there's so many different realms of that, and the way that people identify, that it's an individual preference. So myself, I consider myself a transgender woman, trans female. and I present as female in my day-to-day life as well too. So I do not really ever dress masculine. The only time that I really might is if I've got some really grungy, dirty work that I need to do, and I'll throw on a pair of my old men's jeans and a hoodie, that sort of thing. But for the most part, you're gonna find me wearing leggings, skirts, dresses, like I've got now with a cardigan, sweater, and a scarf, that type of thing. I'm growing my hair out long, and I wear makeup most of the time as well too. Again, unless it just the situation just doesn't present as suitable for that type of thing. So I consider myself trans female. When I refer to myself, though, just in general, I usually even just drop the trans. I feel like I'm a female. So, and that's me. That's not everybody that falls under the umbrella of transgender, even trans female or trans woman. So the important thing I think to remember on some of this is really respecting people's identity. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video and this podcast, that we are all valid, that just the way that we express ourselves or the way that we feel does not make us more or less valuable than anyone else. So I have amazing skills, both masculine and feminine, that I possess. In some of the cases, it was really the way that I was raised. I've got a lot of masculine hobbies, but I was also raised as a male, and lived as a male for 48 and a half years before I, realized and found out that I was transgender female. So I fell into kind of the gender norms of things, and that's a whole nother thing again as well too. So just because someone is trans female doesn't mean that they can't like working on cars or other things that may be masculine. Like in my case, I drive truck. I mean, I'm a feminist. I believe that women can do anything that a man can do. And that goes as well for transgender individuals as well too. I don't think that that activities and occupations are gender specific. Luna, hey, chillax, girly. Luna's definitely all girl, but she comes across as a very aggressive female. So the security guard at the place that I am delivering right now, he was really scared of her, and so I kind of questioned his ability to be a security guard, as scared as he was. So he should be a little more okay with things like that, I guess. So anywho, so we were talking about the roles and things that are portrayed by society and gender, and I think we need to get past that, right? I mean, there's a lot of cisgendered female truck drivers and, architects and carpenters and plumbers and, all of the other heavily male-dominated occupations. Same thing, I'm really into Jeeps. You can see the sign behind my head. And that was something that I did before I realized that I was transgender female, but I am not quitting it. And there is a lot of girls that are really into their Jeeps. It is not a masculine thing. And how can you assign a gender to an activity? It just doesn't make any sense. So as a society, I think we need to stop that and really realize that we are all capable of doing all that. And that goes the same thing for men as well. I know men that like to crochet and knit and sew and cook. I love cooking. And I always have. As a growing up and living as a male, I enjoyed cooking and other things that would be considered feminine as well too. Honestly, it's just a bunch of bunk. We should all be able to do whatever the heck it is that we like without being judged for that. So, what didn't I cover yet? We covered a lot of the terminology. I did want to go about misgendering. Okay, misgendering is huge in the transgender world. One of my support groups on Facebook, we see that all the time, of people that are really upset because they were misgendered, essentially that, you know, they present as female or they present as male, and someone that they are dealing with in the general public, or maybe even their family member, spouse, etc., misgenders them either accidentally or on purpose. And it's really disheartening, and it really can hurt mentally. It's especially when it happens often, it's just really exhausting. And the opposite can be true when we are gendered correctly. So I think that you can tell by looking at me. I don't think I have to tell you that I identify as a female. I mean, I have a cardigan on. I have my scarf that I got in Paris, headband, I have makeup, I have lipstick on. This is the way that I look pretty much every day. I'm wearing leggings. 2 days ago, I had two very different experiences wearing the exact same outfit. I went out to dinner with a friend, a female, cisgender female friend, and as we were leaving, the waitress, talked to us, and she said, "Hey, have a good night, ladies." I walked out of that restaurant, and I just felt amazing, just because of one very small comment. "Have a good night, ladies." She gendered me correctly, and that, to me, makes me feel really good, as does really every transgender person that I know, whether it be male or female, that when they're gendered correctly. The same thing goes when they're, or should say the opposite goes when they're misgendered. I will give, credence to being misgendered on the phone. Very clearly, I have a very masculine voice. It's deep in tone. I don't have a lot of female inflection. This is actually part of the reason that I'm doing my podcast and my video series, is that I want to work on talking. I have a very good amount of gender dysphoria. Let's talk about that really quick. Just side note, gender dysphoria, because I don't want the term to get lost. Gender dysphoria basically is the discomfort that you have. It's typically regarding a part of your body or the way that you look, and it creates mental issues, from depression to sadness, or that sort of thing, or just overall discontent. And some people actually become suicidal over gender dysphoria. It can be as simple as having a 5 o'clock shadow for a transgender woman. That they shave, their beard is super dark, doesn't matter how much makeup they put on, it still shows through. That gives them gender dysphoria. It could be that their facial structure, it could be that they have a penis and not a vagina, or could be the opposite. It could be a trans man and it's their breasts. And so we do things oftentimes to compensate for that. Like a trans man, sometimes they will bind where they're basically pulling their breasts flat so that it doesn't appear that they have breasts, or that it shows as much. Trans women, oftentimes, if they haven't had gender affirming surgery, that they will do what we call tucking, where they're basically pushing their penis down and so in some cases taping it down and things like that, which can be uncomfortable, but the physical discomfort outweighs the mental discomfort of someone seeing a bulge down there, where a cisgendered woman would typically not. And so that is gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a medical condition, and it is treatable in many cases through various different methods. It could be through training, in my case, with my voice. It could be surgical, in the case of maybe a trans man that has dysphoria about his breasts, that he may have a mastectomy to remove the breasts, and sometimes also just through clothing, maybe wearing, you know, clothing that restricts that sort of thing. But gender dysphoria. So just kind of wanted to hit that term a little bit, but the misgendering can really play a lot into that as well too. And so when you look at someone, I would say that if you look at someone and you can tell that they're presenting as female, such as myself, and if you're not sure, don't say sir, okay? I mean, I think that, you know, when you look at me, I don't, in what we call pass, I don't think I pass necessarily as female. There's some times where I feel like I do, but my voice is my dysphoria, my biggest dysphoria anyway, is that, and I'm trying to get over it, and doing this as treatment for me, actually, of talking and feeling like I don't necessarily need to have a high-pitched voice or feminine sounding in order to be female, but it is something that it kind of crushes my soul a little bit. So it's tough to deal with, but okay, I'm gonna get past that. There's a lot of folks that really deal with that dysphoria regarding their gender, and you know, and that's part of the reason that we present heavily as we do. So in some cases, I like to look and feel pretty. I like to feel feminine, and so I wear makeup every day. But if you saw me out on the street and I've got my headband on, my hair is done in a feminine style as much as I can for the length that it is, I'm wearing a full face of makeup, lipstick, I have my scarf that I bought in Paris, I have a cardigan sweater on, and I'm wearing leggings and feminine shoes, don't call me sir. Please don't call me sir. It really is crushing, and for some people it can push them into serious depression. It can cause them to become suicidal. If you don't know, don't say anything that's gender related. You know, you can just say, if you're a clerk at a store, you can just say, have a nice day. You know, it's a beautiful day out there, hope you have a nice day. You don't have to add sir to it, you don't have to add ma'am to it, you know. So if you're not sure, don't say anything. The other alternative is to just simply ask. So it is becoming more commonplace to ask what your pronouns are, or you know, how you'd like to be referred. If someone asks me, what are your pronouns, and it hasn't happened a ton, but I have had people that have asked me, what are your pronouns, that, you know, I will let them know my pronouns are she, her. Thanks for asking. I love it because when you ask someone what are their pronouns, I don't know anyone that is going to get mad about that, right? And it is becoming more commonplace. Asking someone their pronouns is a question of respect. It's saying, I want to be sure that I gender you correctly, that I refer to you the way that you prefer to be referred. I care about you. I know that you are valid. That is what that's saying. And so if you're not sure, or even, you know, if you have a pretty good idea, it never hurts to ask, hey, what are your pronouns? No one's going to get mad about that. And the actual reality of it is that I think that most people really enjoy the fact that someone cared enough to ask, especially those of us in the transgender community. So I encourage you to do that. I've actually seen folks that, you know, that have name tags on there, whether they're cisgender or not, that actually say my pronouns are he, him, she, her, they, them, whatever it may be. Same thing with your social, whether it be Facebook or Instagram, that sort of thing. they all have spots where you can put your pronouns in there. So if you want to, you can go onto your profile and change that so that it says she, her, he, him, they, them, or whatever your pronouns are, because there's a whole lot more other than those 3 sets, and some people use a combination of pronouns or multiples. So I encourage you to jump on that trend and add them to your social as well, and don't be afraid to ask when you have people. So we are going to wrap things up on this one. If you have questions or comments, definitely add them in the YouTube feed, or send me your comments on my Instagram page. Again, the Instagram page is Simply Live with Hope. There is no spaces, no underscores, Simply Live with Hope. You'll find me on there. Give me a follow, shoot me a message, and tell me how you like the show. And also, if you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. And I will also, if I do get those, I will post them on my Instagram story and my responses to those as well. So definitely would love to see that come across. Please share the YouTube channel, and once I start getting the podcast up, which this one will go up on the podcast as well too. I'm just very new to the podcast, so I'm still kind of figuring things out on that. But you should be able to find me on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But definitely look forward to interacting with you on those things. Again, if you are interested in being a co-host with me, or even just on a one-term, maybe just do talk about a specific topic that you're knowledgeable about, hit me up on that and we'll talk, and that might be a possibility as well. And then I am going to also, because there's so much, and we just really talked about, we brushed just the surface of all of this stuff about gender identity, and we really didn't even jump much into gender expression. I am going to have more episodes that deal specifically with some very specific ones. So my youngest child is non-binary, and they have been an amazing help to me as I've transitioned. I am actually going to talk to them and see if that they would like to come on and be a guest on my podcast for talking about non-binary and how they feel about that, and where things go. So that is going to be another one that you can look forward to. And keep in mind too that this is not just for trans individuals. This is for everyone. Okay, I really want to share this far and wide, because overall I think that we can really help to bring society as a whole where we need to be in regards to the rights and respect that transgender individuals deserve, whether they be trans men, trans women, non-binary, or any of the spectrums that fall underneath any of those categories. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, I love you, and just really thank you so much for watching my video or listening to my podcast.